Let's be real, parking should be simple. You drive in, lock up, maybe grab a ticket, and you're off. Easy. But in some cities, that little patch of pavement under your car, it's basically worth its weight in gold. Especially if you're in places like Hong Kong, Sydney, or parts of New Zealand. Because tucked behind those familiar parking signs is a company that's quietly built a global empire by allowing people to legally park. It's not just about collecting loose change from meters. We're talking late fees, overpriced rates, and sky-high hourly charges, all backed by a business model that turns concrete slabs into billion-dollar real estate plays. That company is Wilson Parking. Now, you've probably never thought too hard about the company behind that parking lot sign, but Wilson is a juggernaut. Based in Hong Kong and owned by the massive conglomerate Sun Hung Kai Properties, Wilson Parking has turned something as mundane as car parks into a ruthless business model. Once you understand how they operate, you'll start seeing your quick stop at the grocery store in a whole new light. Alright, let's rewind. Wilson Parking got its start in Australia in 1962, back when gas was cheap, cars were clunky, and parking lots were seen as empty space instead of money-making machines. But it didn't stay local for long. By the late 80s, Wilson had pushed into Hong Kong and New Zealand, laying the groundwork for what would become a parking empire. Today, they run more than 1,500 car parks across the Asia Pacific. And here's where things get interesting. Their parent company, Sun Hung Kai Properties, is one of Hong Kong's biggest real estate giants. In cities like Hong Kong, where space is tighter than a packed train at peak hour, parking is about control rather than convenience. Wilson Parking knows exactly how to play that game. They've taken something as basic as parking and flipped it into a high-stakes real estate hustle. Their strategy is snapping up prime locations such as those right next to train stations, hospitals, and shopping centers, and then charge brutal rates for every minute your car's parked. In central Hong Kong, it's not uncommon to see rates over 25 Hong Kong dollars an hour, which is roughly 5 Australian dollars. That might not sound outrageous at first, but over the course of a full workday, it stacks up quickly. And when you multiply that across thousands of cars, across hundreds of sites, you start to see how Wilson turns something as mundane as parking into a cash flow machine. But here's where it gets aggressive. Wilson Parking has also perfected the dark art of issuing fines. In Australia, where Wilson controls major city parking, especially in CBDs like Sydney and Melbourne, drivers have reported being fined for overstaying by just a few minutes or entering incorrect license plate details when paying through the app. The penalties aren't cheap either, ranging anywhere from $65 to $110. And it gets worse. Wilson has invested heavily in what they call smart parking solutions. These include automated license plate recognition, payment via mobile app, real-time space tracking, and seamless digital invoicing. Sounds futuristic, but in practice, it often means you don't even realize you've made a mistake until it's too late. No staff to appeal to, no grace period, and certainly no leniency. You miss your exit by 60 seconds, you might trigger another full hour's fee. What makes it all the more maddening is how difficult it is to fight these penalties once they've been issued. Customer support is notoriously difficult to reach, with long wait times and little actual resolution when you do get through. Disputes often drag on for weeks, and even after all that, most end with a generic response that leaves the original fine untouched. And if you don't pay promptly, they're more than happy to escalate. Wilson works with debt collection agencies across multiple countries, turning a small parking mistake into a credit problem that can follow you for years. But how do they get away with it? It all comes down to leverage. Wilson Parking, backed by the enormous wealth of Sun Hung Kai Properties, isn't in the business of managing parking lots only. They're in the business of owning land. And not just any land, but some of the most valuable urban real estate in the world. In Hong Kong, where Sun Hung Kai ranks among the top 3 property developers, a car park is seen as a strategic asset. These spaces are now serious investments. In fact, a single parking spot in a Wilson-owned building has sold for over 6 million Hong Kong dollars. That's close to 1.15 million Australian dollars. For that price, you could maybe even buy a decent home in Perth. But in Wilson's world, that kind of money gets you around 12 square meters of concrete and some yellow paint. And that's not even the wildest part. Because while the average driver is hemorrhaging cash just to park for a few hours, Wilson and its parent company are using those parking lots as leverage in a much bigger game: urban development. Some of Wilson's car parks are placeholders. Think of them as temporary income streams sitting on land that will eventually be transformed into office towers, luxury malls, or high-rise apartments. The car park might look like a dead end, but it's actually a cash printing machine until construction begins. So why hasn't there been a massive backlash? Why do governments let them operate this way? Well, it's complicated. In many cities, especially in Australia and Hong Kong, local governments have gradually stepped back from running public parking facilities. Instead, they contract out operations to private companies like Wilson, expecting them to self-regulate. This hands-off approach means private operators can set their own pricing structures, enforcement mechanisms, and dispute resolution processes. And while there are regulatory bodies in some jurisdictions, they're often slow-moving and reluctant to interfere unless there's a major scandal. Wilson Parking effectively sets the rules, enforces them, and profits from the penalties without much oversight. Because of their size and financial backing, they can easily outbid smaller operators and lock down the most strategic locations across cities. And once they've got you in their system, the ecosystem does the rest. They promote loyalty apps and monthly passes that sound convenient on the surface, but come with restrictions buried in fine print. That monthly pass, it might not even cover the car park you use most. Everything is designed to keep you spending through confusing terms, unnecessary friction, and endless fees. What makes all of this even more frustrating is the complete lack of accountability. In 2022, when the New South Wales government reviewed parking enforcement across Sydney, Wilson Parking ranked among the most complained about operators. Drivers raised issues ranging from poor signage to overly aggressive ticketing and unresponsive customer service. Yet somehow, the company continues to secure contracts with city councils and major institutions like hospitals. Not because they offer a better experience, but because they reliably bring in money. What really keeps Wilson's business thriving is the lack of practical alternatives for drivers in certain situations. While cities like Sydney and Melbourne do have public transport networks, they're not always convenient for every route or every schedule, especially in areas where coverage thins out. On top of that, legal street parking is either severely limited or time restricted, and rideshares can quickly become expensive for daily use. So drivers end up circling back to the same car parks, paying whatever rates are posted, and playing by rules they didn't agree to. And Wilson isn't the only one doing it. They're just one of the biggest and most visible players in a broader shift, where parking, once treated as basic city infrastructure, is now a fully commercial asset. As urban land gets more expensive and cars keep competing for limited space, parking has turned into a high-value commodity, and companies like Wilson have positioned themselves perfectly to profit from it. So next time you pull into a car park and see that red and white Wilson logo, take a deep breath. Because behind that logo is a real estate giant, a digital surveillance network, a fine print enforcer, and a wallet vacuum all rolled into one. And unless something changes, they'll keep charging you by the minute, the mistake, and the square meter. But what do you think? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below and let's discuss. And if you enjoyed this story, give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell so you never miss out on more deep dives like this. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, stay curious.